Welcome to Made to Make. Here we talk about creativity, the challenges that come with it, and why we keep showing up anyway. Because hey, we are all made to make. Welcome to the Made to Make podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Grissom. Today's guest is award-winning artist Diane Brewer. Diane's creative journey spans continents and cultures. From India to California, her work and her passion, especially for fostering artistic community, continues to inspire. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Oh, it's just great to have you. You built a tremendous sense of tremendous community through your work and your teaching. So, do you remember a moment? Did you just come out of the womb creating? Do you remember when you decided you'd be an artist?
I was adopted, but then I found out that my biological mother was an artist and that my brothers and my sister are all artists. So that was cool. And I finally met them. And so I guess it just comes to me naturally. But the first time I realized I wanted to be an artist was when we were living in Los Angeles, when I was 3 or 4 years old, and the little girl across the street, Jeannie Lou, whose parents had been in a Japanese internment camp and were now living across the street from us, her mother was a Japanese artist, and she did beautiful paintings. And Jeannie wanted to run around outside and play, and I just wanted to watch her mother paint. Beautiful watercolor paintings. So that was my first time I realized I wanted to do that. And then my grandmother would draw with me. I was tall enough to stand at the sofa, and she would have drawing paper out, and she would draw something and I would draw something too, like a little stick figure and stuff. So I just started loving drawing.
I mean, just, to have that environment, creative environment, and to be fostered like that, that's just so amazing from different places. Now, I'm thinking about, has the Japanese form of art influenced yours in any way?
Not so much the Japanese, but I also, when I moved to India in 1970, and I saw the Indian art, I loved that, the classical Indian art. And so that's why I started taking classes in that. But not so much Japanese art, although I still appreciate it and I really like it.
I was thinking about your sense of space and how well you use that. So maybe there's some sort of unconscious
Maybe it could
connection.
be.
So what? Now you've also lived in Brazil. So
Yes.
how has all this continental travel influenced your work?
Well, we moved to Brazil when I was 5. My father went there. We were missionaries, and we went there. And I always drew. I'd rather draw than pay attention in class. I'd sit in the back of the class and draw, and a lot of the teachers would just send me to the back of the class. And I was in a regular Brazilian school from the time we got there. And then so my parents said, well, why fight it? And so they would get me teachers to help teach me. And Brazilian art has its own flavor. It's very different from Indian art. So I don't know how it influenced me. I enjoyed doing in Brazilian art and the colors and stuff. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
It does, and I was thinking about Indian art is brilliant use of color. Same thing with Brazilian art, just in a different way.
Yes.
And your color is so sophisticated. It doesn't matter what you're painting.
Oh, thank you.
But I was thinking about that. You do have a, I really admire, well, your art in general, but and your use of color is, it really is sophisticated. So what was your training like as an artist?
Well, start taking private lessons, starting in Brazil from different artists, and then even in we would move back to United States in between countries. So I even studied art in Gillette, Wyoming, and then to India. What was my training? I think, um, my training was a private, and then until I got to graduated high school, and then I went to the University of Art in Madras, and then Calcutta, and then studied in Cholamandel, and took classes at Fresno State. But that was my training, and mostly I enjoyed drawing. I love drawing, and color for me was not that easy. I get my blues and my greens mixed up. But yeah, I had a lot of good private teachers, not for a long span of time each time because we moved so often. So a little bit here and a little bit there. So I guess I got a very eclectic uh, group of teachers.
Mm. Well, it sure paid off. You do beautiful work. So you work in a lot of different mediums, and I think pastel seems to be your favorite, but I may be wrong. But anyway, how do you
Yes.
decide what medium you're going to do for each piece?
Well, first of all, I hadn't picked up pastel until 1987.
Hmm.
And the reason I did that is because my kids would get into my oil paints. And so I went to a medium that was a lot easier to clean up. But
Oh.
when I decide, it depends what somebody wants. A lot of times it depends on the commission. If they're doing a commission, there's a lot of pen and ink. I did a lot of pen and ink work uh, for the covers of magazine stuff, brochures, uh, and even some of the book cover. I did a couple of book covers. I just recently illustrated part of a book, and that was all pen and ink. But that's the person asking me, the customer asking me to do it in that medium. And then some people prefer oil, and some people prefer pastel. So it's usually what somebody asks. I enjoy oil. That's what I started painting in when I started painting. And but pastel is so pure and such a beautiful medium. There's there's so much pigment in it, and there's so
Mhm.
many colors to choose from. And when you're doing oil, you're mixing your colors, and you
Yeah.
have to be pretty precise. And if you're doing a big painting, you have to mix up a lot of color. Depending, sometimes I do a 4 by 6 foot painting, and I have to make sure I've got enough color to cover the canvas.
Mhm.
Um, and some people request an oil painting. Like down south in La Jolla, I just finished a 4 by 6 foot painting, and they wanted oil all done in black and white, and it's just their preference. They
Mm.
prefer that. And other people say, I want it done in pastel. Little tiny paintings with little
Yeah.
tiny stuff done in pastel. But it's a challenge.
Yeah, thank God for pastel pencils.
Oh,
Or
yes. I have just about as many pastel pencils as I do pastels.
and I was thinking about the difference between well, pastels out of all of the mediums is direct. There's no there's nothing between you and the pigment. You are actually holding the pigment and applying that. So there's that
Yes.
really direct nature of that medium.
Yes. Yeah. And people say, well, you can't mix it. I mix pastels all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, there's a I just finished a portrait of a house, and it took me three different colors to get the correct plaster color on the house. So you can mix, and then I have all my pastel powders and stuff over here that I make my own pastels if I don't have the correct color.
Wow. That's awesome. So what do you use for a binder?
Water, a little bit of the binder, and the pastel pigment, and it's really pure.
Wow.
If you use too much binder, it gets really hard.
Okay.
So the more binder you use, the harder the pastel.
Didn't know that. I learned something today. Let's talk about pastels. Can you walk me through do you do, your creative process on a piece? Do you start with a thumbnail? Do you just go?
Ooh, I really admire people who can do that.
Me too.
I usually have, well, we'll take a portrait. I'll do it. My example will be a portrait. I will have uh, the reference photo, and I might do a couple of sketches of the reference photo and then sketch it up on the board or the paper. And it's always sanded. I always use sanded. Uh, Portraits, I usually use about between a 6 and an 800 grit paper. And I'll sketch it in, and then I'll do a value study.
Mm.
And once I have the lights and the darks exactly how I want them, and um, a good drawing of it. It can't be just sloppy. Then I'll stain that in with, I'll have a little spray bottle, and I'll spray it all over the pastel paper or board, and that sets the drawing in to the
Mm.
paper, and it stains it. Then I can go over it, and for portraits, I do it all in values of greens: bright, lemon green, medium green, and a dark green. So it looks like a Martian. It looks really kind of weird. And when I'm showing progress of the picture to a customer, I'm always afraid to show them that step because it looks really strange. And then I go in with my warm colors, and those cold green colors it just, you go in over it with the umbers and the pinks and the reds, and it just brings the painting to life
Mm.
because we have a lot of green in our face, and that comes through. And that's almost always done in pastel pencil. And then
Okay.
when I'm completely done and happy with that, then I'll probably go in with soft pastel for the background, for the clothing, maybe as a touch up here or there, like in hair and stuff. But that's my short version of my process.
So are you do you create every day, or are you a binge creator? So what?
There are some times when I take a painting and I turn it to the wall because I am so sick and tired of it. And then there are other times when I live on 2.5 acres out here in the country, and I will just close my studio doors and not go back in.
Mm.
Sometimes for a week, I just have to get away from it,
Yeah.
and I go pull some weeds or plant plants or try not to kill my trees or my plants. But then when I get on a roll, if I get on a roll, I don't want to be interrupted.
Yes.
I just paint. I can paint for hours. And there have been times when I get a knock on my studio door, and there's my husband with a plate of sandwiches or chips or dip or something to keep me going. Yeah, or if he gets lonesome, he comes out. I tell him he's like a cat with a mouse, leaving it on my doorstep, trying to get my attention. But I can paint quite late into the early evening. Yeah.
I'm with you, though. I don't like getting interrupted. Once I'm on a roll,
Yeah.
leave me
Yes.
alone.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So, I was going to ask what you do when you get stuck, but you've already answered that. That's great. I mean, getting outside. Do you have any advice for anybody who hasn't created in a long time how to get started?
One of the things that I think is a really positive thing, uh, because you can watch a lot of videos on YouTube about art
Mm-hmm.
and watch a lot of how-to classes and they're good. But the best thing is to find an organization or a
Mm,
group of other artists and get together and paint, whether
yes.
it be just at somebody's house or somebody's backyard or at a studio. Like I paint at the Door Gallery every Friday and then a few extra times during the month, just to be around other artists, and you exchange ideas, you
Yes.
give yourselves critiques, and there's so much positive energy coming from something like that that it can really encourage you. And if you're stuck, it gives you ideas of how to get unstuck from. Sometimes you're looking at your painting and all you need is new eyes looking at it
Yes.
to say,
Yes.
oh, yeah, you really screwed up here. And then, yeah, you're right. Or everybody's favorite thing to say to me is, don't doodle it to death, Diane.
I had a teacher one time and she said, "Ooh, you're one of those that thinks if a little bit is good, a lot is better." And she would tell me to stop,
Yeah,
quit futzing
yeah.
with it.
Because it makes me happy. I just keep painting on it.
Yes. And now for a wee break. Is Made to Make podcast brightening your day like finding unexpected money in your coat pocket? Then help keep the episodes coming. Head on over to wearemadetoMake.com. There you can share the show, contribute financially, or simply help spread the word. Every bit of support keeps these conversations going and your inspiration flowing. That's wearemadetoMake.com. Now let's get back to the show. So I'm wondering about back to your time abroad. What do you think about that time? Things that you learned there that you couldn't have learned if you hadn't traveled.
Well, in Brazil, I was very young, so the classes I took there were just beginning. Um, and I probably could have learned the same thing in United States, uh, except there everything was so laid back and easygoing and a joy to learn art. And the teachers were very kind and let me experiment a lot. In India, because I went to classical Indian art, I had to learn what gave it that look.
Mm,
And a lot of almost like every, classical Indian art has its own look, its own colors. The eyes are always a certain way. The hands motion is everything has a meaning and a reason.
Oh, okay.
Even the way you draw the figure, they're always on the inhale. So they always have this,
Mm.
they look like they're breathing in and they have this nice uplifting look. Um, I could have only learned it there. Maybe I could have taken Indian classes in the United States, but being with other students there and learning in an Indian university, I think that was a great opportunity for me to learn a totally different type of art. And even when I did batik at the artist colony in Chilomandel, I did and I did figures in batik. It was always the same classical, uplifting, um, breathing in look for the people. And that was fun. I enjoyed that. It was on the beach. Artists lived in huts and got to do batik. And I thought, oh man, I could do this. This is cool. I could live like this.
Well, you've always had a connection to community and people. Can you talk about your creation? I mean, Art Hub in itself is an incredible creation. Can you talk about what you've done there and
I really wanted to open up a gallery for artists, not just good artists, but young um, young artists that are just starting out and they just needed a place to get their confidence
mm,
and to be able to show their work and to be around other artists. And I know a lot of galleries only want to have the very best that they know they have a chance of selling their artwork. And that's great. I think that's good. But I really wanted to give artists, up and coming artists, a chance to show their work, to be around other artists, to be there during Art Hop once a month to have other people come in and look at their work. And so that was my main intent of opening the Art Hub. And then having the classes, kids classes all the way up through adult classes. The biggest challenge in my life was teaching children. Being finding my patients, and it was like herding cats, but they taught me a lot. They taught me patience. They taught me how to think outside my box, and and that was fun. And how brilliant some young artists are, that they have gone on to study art, which was really cool. Another thing that I did was I hosted a lot of things. I hosted art organizations. I hosted art shows for organizations. I would bring in artists from the furthest away I brought one in was named Lynn Diefenbach from Australia. And I hosted the high school violin. Uh, the kids would paint violins, and I hosted the high school violin paintings where I Junior League of Fresno. I hosted them. Uh, Aquarius Aquarium. They want to open up an aquarium here in Fresno, and I hosted it. So I just love to get all these people and their creativity together
wow.
and help show people what we have here in the Central Valley, how much creativity there is. And you can't do it by sitting at home. You have to get out and do it.
That's true. So, what
Yeah.
advice would you give to somebody who thinks they're not creative, but they're itching to do something?
if they want to be creative, get together with other people. Um, or, for example, I went to get a pizza after I was painting one day, and because I wasn't going to cook, I was too tired to go cook. So right next door to the pizza place was this clay shop, a clay place, like a studio. And I went in there, and it was so cool to see how many people were in there working in clay. And
Mm.
I love clay. And I so if somebody just walk in to a place, just walk into a studio, just see what they're up to. A lot of studios have classes, and just the clay place, I thought, I think I might come back here and play in clay with these people. Looks like fun. Just get out there and see what is available. The Clovis Senior Center has classes of all kinds of art. Go and check it out. And I'm sure every town, every city has a center where they offer classes. And if you find classes, you're going to find creativity.
Yeah.
And then to get creative, you have to be creative. So just start by doing something, even if it's like in gardening. Go out and get some succulents and plant them, and then
Yeah.
make a drawing of them. You have to start somewhere,
Yes.
and it's never too late. And sometimes you think that your art or your creativity isn't good enough. It's good enough. As long as you're having fun, that's what counts.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you've been incredibly inspiring. Where can people find out more about you online?
Well, I have a website, DianeBrewer.com. So it's DianeBreuer.com. And that's my website. You can find me on Facebook. I'm hanging around Facebook sometimes, not a lot, and posting my stuff there too. Uh, but that's basically where you find me. I guess I'm on Instagram. I'm not on social media a lot because I am usually very busy.
Yeah.
So either with my artwork or my grandkids or my family or my garden.
Well, that's great. I will put all those links in the show notes so that people can find you. Well,
Okay.
thank you, everybody. Thank you, Diane. You've totally been
Thank you.
inspiring.
Thank
And
you.
thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share so that I can bring more inspiring people to you. We'll see you next time. That's a wrap.